The demo for today is going to be the vanilla walk. Now, the vanilla walk is one of the most misunderstood assignments that I see, weirdly. You would think it would be pretty simple because the vanilla walk follows a very strict structure. You have technically four poses: contact, down, passing, up, and then you go back to contact and repeat that cycle. There's a structure to it. There are things that have to happen at a certain way and a certain time, and that is that. So you'd think it would be one of the easiest assignments. It's one of the ones that should just be like, yep, done, move on. But really, it's one of the most misunderstood because a lot of people don't understand why they're doing it and what's the point. One of the big areas that tends to be a struggle is the fact that the vanilla walk is not a natural walk. Most people, if you look and film an entire street filled with people, a plaza filled with people, hundreds of people, the odds are that none of them will walk in the same way that a vanilla walk is. The vanilla walk is like a standardization of a bunch of different walk concepts that no one ever actually does exactly like that. So why is it helpful? Why is it something that we even want to practice if no one walks that way? Well, the big thing is that the vanilla walk incorporates elements of almost every type of walk, and we're not just trying to recreate a walk. We're trying to understand why things happen so that we can either have that happen in our shot or break that and have it happen differently for a specific reason. It's the same thing that when I was talking about contacts during the last stream, where normally you will have the frame before the contact, it hits the ground, frame after is a little bit lower generally. That's a generalization. We can change that to create a different feeling. We can adjust that and we can make our own choices because of it. The vanilla walk is that to the extreme. All of these things that we are learning about the vanilla walk are things that we can adjust and tweak and morph to create totally unique walks while still understanding that basic principle. So it's a very important assignment to understand. We are not just working and throwing things in and going, is moving. No, you want to think it through every one of the things that you're going through. So today I'm going to try to really go through as much as we can on that and explain why each of these things is important. The other thing about the vanilla walk that's very important is that it is a culmination of everything we've learned up to this point. So the bouncing ball, timing and spacing, pendulum, tail overlap, all of these things come into play in a small way with the vanilla walk. And especially even at its simplest, the bally vanilla walk, which a bally vanilla walk is just, you have a ball with legs and that's it. No torso, no arms, no head. It's just hips and legs. You can apply almost all of your fundamentals into this and everything kind of applies in there in some way or form. So that's what we're going to be doing here today. And like I said, I'm going to be trying to explain as much as I can in here because it is so important and it is one of those things that gets misunderstood or not enough time and focus is put into understanding why something happens. So to start off with here, let me show a walk that I quickly animated before this stream. And this walk here is a walk filled with a collection of things that I quite often see wrong in student work. Now, at this point, this is a whole mishmash of different things. Not every student will get every single one of these incorrect, but there's usually going to be one or two of these things in this walk that is not working right. So you can see that this walk is very janky. It's not moving right. It doesn't feel natural. And again, the reason why is because as I was going through, I was just placing things essentially randomly, and not thinking through why something would happen and what are the implications of that thing. And what it creates is just movement, just frantic movement with no purpose to it. Now, if your walk looked like this at any point as a student, does that mean you're a failure and that you're never going to get it right? No, not at all. It just means that we need to think through and understand what isn't working so that we can get a walk that feels more natural and actually moves correctly. Now, I'm not going to point out all the different things that are wrong here right away. We can maybe come back to this after we talk about everything, and maybe it'll make it easier for all of you to also see, oh, now I see what's wrong and why it's wrong through this. But I just wanted to show this specifically because this is a result that I see a lot of students get somewhere along these lines. Maybe not, again, everything wrong, but where there's just this weirdness to the walk. So how do we avoid it? How do we build a walk on a solid structure to begin with? Well, first of all, we kind of need to understand how a walk works. So at its very basic level, I'm just going to do some quick draw overs here. A walk is a character standing that then begins to walk forward. So first of all, how does a character stand? Well, the big thing that we want to avoid when we're animating a walk is the perfect straight legs. Just duk, duk, and then the feet are perfectly facing forward here. That is boring. It is not interesting. When you think of any walk, even a vanilla walk, what it is a person, a character, not a rig, a human being, someone with a personality standing that begins to walk. So the very first thing that's most important to any walk is how does the person stand? Because that's going to influence how they move. For most people, the way we stand here is with our feet pointed inwards slightly and our toes pointed outwards. Like that. And normally with our weight shifted off to one side, but I'm going to keep this even for now. So you're going to have something a little bit more like this. See how that pose just feels much more interesting and alive compared to this one here that's just flat and just dead and everything straight and perpendicular and parallel. That's not good. We don't want that. We can have that character be much more dynamic. And like I said, most of the time our feet come in. Now, why does that happen? Honestly, it's just anatomy. If you think of your hips, I'm going to do a very basic hip here. So you've got your hips here. The bone structure of our legs, you've got your femur bone kind of coming up here. That's the bone that of your upper leg comes in, and it comes in like so under our body. Typically, women will have that a little bit less. Masculine characters will have that a little, female characters will tend to have that more extreme because of the hips are a little wider. Male characters will have that a little bit straighter. But honestly, it really just depends on the person. It's not like it's going to be this way kind of thing. So structurally, our legs come in like so. And then our lower legs tend to be actually pretty straight here. So this would be the actual bone structure of our legs right here. Very rough. I'm not an artist. So what this allows is our muscles to attach correctly, because you've got muscles that attach up here to the femur. This is the muscle that allows you to lift your leg up sideways. You've got muscles that attach from the pelvic area here down to your knee right through there. So that's why you get that big muscle right there on the inner leg, because it's really like you've got this big area of muscle there just for moving the leg, part of the quadriceps right here. And then on the lower leg, you've got your calf muscles right there. So you can see how visually, when we add the muscles in here, it straightens out the legs. But we need that room here for all of that muscle to be attached in there. Our legs have huge muscles compared to the rest of the body. So if we don't angle those legs correctly and just keep them straight, it's always going to feel robotic. It's not going to feel natural or feel like a character can actually move right. Now, with that said, we have a lot of different personalities. We don't all have to stand the exact same way. But again, that comes down to when your character is standing, think of who they are. Are they a laid back character who's going to stand and have this kind of like nonchalant stance to them, something like this? Are they going to be a proud character who stands and maybe you've got the body tilted up here and they stand with one foot like way in front of the other, and you get that like proud just look to them, and this is just how they stand normally? Or are they like this standard cowboy and they're standing like with that bow-legged kind of feel to them right there? You can see how by doing that, by thinking of how does the character stand first, we haven't even animated anything. We haven't even done anything. It's just sketches. But we can feel a different personality and different character for each person here. Even if, like, let's do a side view. If you think of like the Shaggy or the Fred from Big Hero 6, like their default pose is not going to be standing straight like this. It's going to be with the knees bent, because the rest of their body, they'd be in that S shape, is going to be something like this, and the head's like way forward here. So think of that pose. It's going to make your walks way more interesting. For vanilla walk, again, this is all starting to go into personality over here. Vanilla walk, all we need is to think that the feet come in to the center right there when we stand. Okay. And the toes go out usually. So we've got our default pose. Great. We understand why that is now. Okay. How does a walk work? A walk works, at least a human walks, in a way that is very efficient. It's one of the things that make us as humans one of the apex predators in the world. Not because we have claws, we have tiny little stubby fingernails. That's not going to do anything against a tiger. We have no physical armor. It's not like a bear that can just is a tank or a rhino or an elephant. We've got nothing. We don't have speed. We can barely outrun a mouse. How are we going to survive? The way we survive is that we are unstoppable. That's the best way that it was described to me when I was a student, is we are like the Terminator. We don't move fast. We don't run. We don't sprint. We don't have any like superpowers. But the thing that we do very, very well is that we can keep going and going and going. And what will usually happen, especially in the old days, is when people would hunt, they would just outlast the animal until the animal either had to stop or died of exhaustion. And we would just keep trucking along. And that's it. We are just this very efficient collection of body mechanics. And part of that is because we can lock our knees. So if you think of a regular quadruped, for example, the way they stand, this is just going to be the back legs here. The back leg, if you're a digigrade, is something like this. So you see how it has that natural bend in the knee right there. So there's the knee right here. Even if you're plantigrade. So for anyone who doesn't know, digigrade is when you stand on your toes. Plantigrade is when you walk flat on your feet like us. If you look at a bear is plantigrade. So they're going to have a leg structure that's a little bit more like this. Claws right there. But if you look at their back legs, same with a digigrade animal, you're going to notice that the knees are bent all the time. Why is that? If you look at those back legs, the knees are bent because it provides power. It's why if you've ever had a dog or a cat or some sort of pet, they could just be sitting still or standing still, not doing anything, and then suddenly poof, they're gone and they just take off because their legs are constantly in anticipation. They are ready to move. They're bent and coiled, ready to go. It's very explosive, powerful. We don't have that. When we stand, our legs are straight. Something like this. The knee is locked. Just like how we can lock our arms, our knees stay locked. What that does is it makes it so that we're not ready to move very quickly. We don't have that power, that coiled up spring of energy. But think about just standing still for a little bit of time. Try standing still with your knees locked, even just for a minute. See how tired you are. And then stand with your knees slightly bent for a while. You're going to notice that you get tired very, very quickly like that. Because we lock our knees, we have a very efficient way of standing, of holding still, but also a very efficient way of walking. Because we're not expending energy just to hold ourselves up like most other animals. So this gives us a very unique advantage in terms of energy. Now, okay, we've got that locked leg. Great. The other thing that we have compared to other animals is that we don't have a whole front end. So a quadruped is going to have that whole front end as well to the creature here. And I don't know what creature we're getting here. This cat. Angry cat. Yeah. With no tail. There we go. Very long legs for a cat. So a quadruped has all of this weight to the front of it. So not only do they have to stand and hold their weight up, but then they have to push it forward and move forward with all of that weight. It's physically much more demanding than what we are doing. So when we are standing, and no, I'm not doing any 2D animations today. This is just doodles to explain a concept. And also, hello, it's nice to see you in here again. So when we are standing, we stand with all of our body over top of our feet. So something more like this. Now, what does that give us? Well, balance for one. Like I said, we lock our knees, we can just stand there. There we go. But now when we start to walk, we don't have to try and push all of this weight forward. All we need to do is take our body and just go whoop, slightly tilt forward. And now gravity will literally pull us forward. Our body weight is slightly ahead of our balance point here. And now gravity starts pulling us down. And all we have to do is move our feet. And there you go. We catch ourselves. A standard walk is not a matter of pushing and dragging ourselves forward. It's literally just letting ourselves fall and catching ourselves. We're letting gravity do half the work for us. That is extremely efficient. So, this is what makes humans such a Terminator-like creature, is that we don't have to use a lot of physical power to do that. Now, Blaze, you were asking how comes cats stand 2 legs sometimes? It's just to see higher. So my cats right now, they are weirdly, I've never had cats that stand on their hind legs nearly as much as these cats. They will kind of squat down, and you get the long foot here, and just kind of stand there with their paws kind of like that as they're looking up at things and just stretching around. And they're going to stand like that a lot of the time. It's very cute and very weird when they just stand there and look at you. But even then, they're not going to be, there's no way that they would be as efficient as us because their legs still have that bend. And to be fair, their feet aren't made to walk like this. Our feet, we get a big pad right here on our heel and a big pad on the ball of the toes as well as the toes themselves. If you look at a cat's feet, they got the cute little mitten bean toes right there. But then here it's all bone and skin. So if a cat was walking like this would actually damage their foot quite a bit because they're literally just banging the bone against the floor. I had a cat like that once where they had a diabetes and it caused their back legs to lose strength, and he had to walk like that for a while until we got the right medication for him. And you could just hear how painful it was because it was like banging your elbows on the floor or banging your knees on the floor. It was bone to floor. Not good for them. So all of this just to say that we are built very efficiently for walking. Now, how does that all come into a walk? Well, now we understand what we need to achieve to make a walk feel correct. Is that forward lean. If we don't lean forward, we are not walking, we are dragging and pushing. So we need our character to lean forward as they move forward. Okay, so those are essentially the mechanics of a walk. We start from how a character stands, and then we build off of that by having the character move forward. Okay, hopefully that all makes sense so far. I know it's a lot of theory and concept, but understanding all of this is what's going to make it so that your mechanics feel correct and there's a reason for them. That's the key. Like I've been saying before, when we're animating, we're not just moving things and placing them for the sake of moving. We are moving them and placing them because there's a reason for it. And sometimes we might think, okay, how can I make that and tweak it and change those rules to get a different feeling to it? It's a conscious choice, but we need to understand why we're doing it in the first place. So with all of that, let's actually jump into the actual assignment here. So once again, this is our incorrect walk, and already, if you think back on what we were just talking about, right here, you can see a big problem. That front view, those legs, perfectly straight. Not interesting. Not good. If we look at the passing pose, where the character is walking forward here, notice how that leg is, in this case, bent, but also the character is leaning back slightly on that side view there. That's going to make it so that the character can't walk forward. That's not right. So already we know 2 things that we can fix in here.